students are gone, but you are still here. And we know how you feel because you are done. But you have so much work to do to get ready for tomorrow. Good afternoon, podcast listeners everywhere. Welcome to After the Bell, a Stunt Brothers production. A podcast that gets inside the life of a teacher and provides a wellness guide for being prepared to take on this most challenging of professions. I'm Martin Stuvel.
And I'm Roy Hunt. And we share your pain, having taught a combined 70 years. The guarantee of this podcast is to make you laugh, make you think, and give you at least one little nugget that you can use in the classroom. So get out your marking, organize your supplies, or just pour yourself a coffee.
I want something stronger.
And listen, engage, and interact with After the Bell, a podcast for you, the hard-working, dedicated teacher who wants free lesson plans, free advice, and a free meal.
Okay, Roy, but I'm not paying for anything more than McDonald's. Well, Mr. Hunt, here we are, episode number 8.
Number 8, and we're still talking to each other.
Still smiling.
Still laughing.
Bring on episode 800.
No. I'm going to say, let's get to 100 and we'll see where we're at from there. Okay?
Sounds good. How you been doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Nice.
I know that when this episode airs, it won't be Christmas time.
Right.
But now we're experiencing
Christmas is everywhere.
Christmas. It's everywhere around us.
Right.
And one of the things that I was well known for at Ridgeway, my elementary school that I retired from,
yes.
I was known for putting together the food drive for the school.
Oh, wonderful.
Right? And in that food drive...
How kind to do that. Yeah.
You know, there's lots of volunteer hours that went into it. Mm-hmm. But I would use my class and we'd decorate boxes.
Yep.
And we would collect food from all the students in the school. And then we'd take that food downstairs into our heritage hall in the area where we could display it. Uh-huh. And I would then look at what we were receiving, and it depended on whatever inspiration I could draw from. One year, the inspiration for me was we had just had a couch delivered to our house, and I had this very long box.
Oh, okay.
And my family said, "Oh, go recycle that," and I said, "No, it's food drive time." And I looked at it, and I looked at it, and I just had looked at a lesson plan I had. For an indigenous unit, and it was building a birch bark canoe.
Okay.
But
not out of birch.
But not, yes, it was out of paper.
I see.
But then I realized that I could take that template and expand it. So I did, and I took that sofa box, that couch box, and I made it into a massive, I called it a peace canoe, and I painted it white to give that look of birch bark, and then put in some flecks of black to look more authentic as a birch bark canoe. Then I took a sewing needle, a big one, and I guess it's like some very thin hemp. And I actually sewed the gunnels. So I sewed the bow and the stern of the canoe together, so that it would look like it was tied together with the what would traditionally, I believe, be roots from plant. And I put it into the heritage hall. The cans of food were laid on their side to look like waves.
So they kind of go around.
They would use them as waves.
Oh, wow.
And
Fabulous.
then the peace canoe sat in the middle of the waves, and then we just filled it full of food.
Wow.
And so the idea is, once we had something created, students would come in through the front doors of the school, and they would say, "Oh, I want to bring some food to add to that." So it became sort of a visual scene that could be added to daily through contributions from families and students.
What a wonderful thing. But now you're not there.
And now I'm not there. And I did it for many years.
Okay.
And so in remembering the contribution that I made to our school, the food drive is now called the hunt for food.
Wow.
Because my last name is Hunt.
Yeah,
right?
you've made it, man.
But it's wonderful that it's still continuing.
Yeah, yes.
That it has had a positive impact.
Yes.
On the North Shore for North Shore Neighborhood House, and it's our students having empathy, thinking of others during this time of year,
Right.
sharing, I guess. The milk of human kindness.
Right.
And as I say that, I'm looking over at you, and you have this long sleeve shirt on, and it says, the milk of human kindness.
It does.
It says empathy and good for you, good for everyone.
There you go.
And what does that,
You're
where's
staring
that
across
from?
at me, and you're noticing my shirt. Nice.
Yes.
It's Billy Bragg. Billy Bragg, yeah.
Yes.
Great British artist. And he just was at the Commodore, and I was at I had his show, and it was just fantastic. And one of his songs it's about empathy. All those things you talk about in the spirit of Christmas. Milk of Human Kindness is about empathy. And one of the lines in his song, he says, if you are falling, I'll put out my hands. If you feel bitter, I will understand. I love you. I am the milkman of human kindness. I will leave an extra pint, right? An extra pint of love, right? Yes. And that's the spirit of this time. And it was wonderful to see Billy Bragg, who's 69 now, but he was at the Commodore, and he's still the protest singer that he was and still has the same values. And he sang the song, The Power of the Union, and the entire crowd was singing along, The Power of the Union, right? Fists in the air. And it was just brought me back to the 80s and that time, but it also made me realize that, there is power in a union, right? And it just reminded me of that. So fantastic, yeah. And when you talk about Christmas, I'm happy that I'm not necessarily having to deal with the rush of Christmas and all the projects and everything that has to be done, and of course report cards that have to get in, and parent meetings. So it's an exhausting time, and we know teachers at this time of year, they're fighting colds, fighting the flu, their voices are going, and they have so much to do. And the kids also, their energy level is right up there.
That's right.
Well, the teachers' level is starting to go down.
It's starting to go down.
So, big bravo to the teaching staffs of our schools that keep it up at this point.
That's right.
But I do miss the parties, actually, I must say, and some of the Christmas parties we had, whether it's with the kids, but also some of the staff functions and things we would do.
Yeah, it's just a great time because we don't get those opportunities to collectively get together.
No.
And I'm glad that there are certain times of the season that we do.
Yeah.
Christmas
really
has always been a wonderful one.
Yeah. We always had a few parties when we worked together, right?
Right. And whether
we worked together.
Sometimes we were lucky. There was someone who would host a party, or we would go out to a different venue, and I
think a lot of us were turning 40 to our 40s when we were together, Dorothy Linus, and I think that was a lot of the reasons we were having these celebrations was those moments, right? Whether it was that or people were having kids and we were celebrating the newborn children, those kind of things.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember one party in particular that it was a celebration for someone who was turning 40. And actually we found out when we showed up that it was a surprise party.
We didn't know, right?
And we didn't know.
That was the surprise.
That was the first surprise.
Yes.
And so there were quite a few of us, and we were in the backyard, and the person whose birthday it was, whose birthday that we were celebrating, wasn't there yet.
No, they were on their way.
And it was taking a while, and there was a very large number of people there, and we were expected to be quiet.
Yes.
And then, as we know, being teachers, there's always the people who follow the rules intently.
That one gentleman kind of took over, right?
But there's one family member
he'd been in the army,
and he made sure that we knew that we weren't following the rules.
Yes.
And I think that was one time where I think I needed my union rep
at a party, right?
At a party, because I was not feeling comfortable.
No, and everyone, I think, was relieved when the person who was turning 40 showed up and we could say surprise and take a breath and get on with the rest of the evening
forward,
and enjoy the party. But it was kind of a funny situation where we felt we had to have a union rep, right? To be our voice, because it's hard when you don't have a rep, sometimes in life. And that was just a party.
Yes.
But, we've kind of referred to the union a few times in this podcast, from me talking about Billy Bragg and that kind of support and idea. And I think we're hitting our theme.
I think we are.
It is the power of the union.
Power of the
right?
union. Yes.
And having that support and knowing that the union is there to support you and help you in this very, very challenging job.
Yes.
Right?
And I know that one of the things we have in bringing this up is that I have experience as a CSR.
You've been executive on the union,
the executive,
right? Yes.
And then when I look over at you, that I am reminded that you have been a president of the North Shores.
I'm glad that I didn't have to bring it up. Thank you.
North Vancouver Teachers.
Yeah, it's funny how,
Association.
One moment you're starting teaching, you're 25 years old, they need a new rep for the union at the school. Everyone turns and looks at you, and you're the only one who doesn't put their hand up, but for some reason you end up being the union rep, right?
It's like those who want to volunteer step forward, and all the people on staff step backwards.
Yeah, and then a few years later you find out you're president too. But it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to work with the teachers and to be a support system and to show them that they are not alone. That's what we're really in this podcast trying to get across. That we know this is the hardest profession in the world, and it's challenging, and sometimes you feel alone because you're in that classroom dealing with all those students, but you don't see a lot of adults around you. And we want people to understand that another network, and a very important network is the union and the support of that. And when you talked about the milk of human kindness, it reminded me of when I would put on orientations for new teachers when I was president, and I would always start with the opening line that the union is unconditional love for you. Like, we really are there to support the teachers and in no way judge, right? And it's important that people know that there's someone who's there for them no matter what. And we will help guide them and support them and be there, whether it's for wellness issues or for other things that come up, right?
Yes. And the fact that we have a collective agreement, and in that collective agreement, although sometimes it's hard to clearly understand it, and then what's why approaching someone from the union, someone who understands a collective agreement very well, to sort of sift through some things if you're not sure about the exact expectations. But the collective agreement is a perfect guideline to help us look at things where we might think that I feel I've been asked maybe to do something that I'm not sure if that's the realm of my job description, I guess.
Yeah. And the key words you use there are a collective agreement, right? It's an agreement between the union and the board. And it's not just a union document, it's both parties' documents. And it's a kind of an agreed to set of rules that we will follow to. That's exactly what it is. And so that's a big part of that as well, right?
Yes.
And I think we've hit our theme.
I think we
we've
have.
hit just talking about the fact that we've talked about in other episodes when Colvier Mann was on and superintendents were on, but that you are not alone. And one of those areas, so you know you're not alone, is the support of the union. And there's that sound. Tell us, Roy, what that sound is.
That's the sound of the nugget. The nugget is something that teachers can use in their classroom, in their professional life, possibly in their school, something that can help them to navigate through the teaching profession or through their teaching.
So our theme is the union and the support of the union. So what could we do for a nugget on that topic?
I think in the nugget, we should get the teachers to have a copy of the collective agreement.
Yeah, everyone should have that. And whether it's a hard copy or if you have a digital copy, go to where it is and download it to your iPad or your phone or wherever and just have it. But start to look through it. Start to get to know your collective agreement. Don't expect others to always tell you what's in there. It's your document. Start doing it and start looking in it.
And it sounds like we're combining a little bit of homework in there.
We are.
But it's using the collective agreement and being preemptive, thinking about things in your future. If you're planning a family and you're going to planning on taking some leave,
look at the leave section.
Look at the leave section.
There's employment rights section. There's all kinds of different sections, and it's good to know what those sections are and know what's in them. So when you do have a question, you can actually maybe answer it yourself first before you have to ask someone. And it's always empowering, I find.
It is.
When you have the information yourself
I
first,
agree.
right?
When you find that information, and especially when you find that information and you read it and you say, well, I'm not so sure about this. Then
ask.
you can contact a representative of the union and get some further clarification. And I think knowing beforehand when these things come up, a really good example would be that if you know that you're going to have surgery in the future and you have to take some time off work, you should know what your rights are.
What your rights are, right? And any administrators who are listening, they need to realize that it's a collective agreement, so they should know it too. I really am going to root them on to get that copy out, right? Make sure the district sends you a copy, whether it's digital or it's a hard copy, and get to know that collective agreement so that when you work together with your staff, you actually both have a really good understanding of that. Yeah.
Yes. And for those people out there, for our listeners out there who don't have the privilege of being in a union environment.
Maybe they need to contact Billy Bragg and start singing the power of the union, right?
I encourage them to know their rights.
Yeah, because we know there are many listeners who are from private schools or areas that maybe they do not have a union. Right?
Yes.
But that doesn't mean you have no rights.
That's right. And so you should know those rights and be aware of them again, so that you're not blindsided when someone comes up to you and says, well, you have to do this. And you're saying, well, why? So when you're asking why and when you don't know what your rights are, then that allows someone in a different position, often a position of authority, to take
advantage of you.
To take advantage
Absolutely.
of that. And so you should know. And then you can make the decisions, a thoughtful or a mindful decision as to whether you will do that.
Absolutely.
But that's the important part.
So our nugget is to get your collective agreement or know your rights if you're in a district or an area of North America or you work in the private system where you don't have a union, but know your rights, know your collective agreement, and then get it out and get to know it.
And get
right?
to know it.
You don't read it all in one night because I know you'll fall asleep on that, right?
No, don't do that. Please don't do that. Well, maybe you should. If you're having problems sleeping at night,
maybe that's
read the collective agreement.
For sure. But, one clause at a time, one page at a time, one section at a time.
Yes.
And so by the end of the year, you know it quite well. What's that sound? The homework board.
The homework board.
So let's have a look at the homework board.
Well, I'm looking. We did kind of give a nugget and a little homework, but I'm feeling something very exciting.
Well, I think we've talked about collective agreement, but I think there's so much more to a union than just a collective agreement. It certainly is what drives the decisions and the relationship with the board. But I think there's so many more supports and services offered by the union.
The union.
So we're going to go on a field trip. That's a fantastic idea. And I believe we're going to visit the North Vancouver Teachers Association, which is our local union here in North Vancouver, to meet with the table officers to find out all the supports that the union can do for teachers to help out and make you feel you're not alone.
That's right. And then we've been talking about this a lot. Opportunities to find out that you're not alone.
And you've been on the executive of the union. I've been president, so I think we know where the office is.
I think
we'll find it.
Yes.
So, and it's just next to the pub.
Yes.
Well, here we are with our guests at the NVTA office. We have Katrina Russell and Robin Deleurme. Thank you for joining us. They are the the second vice. Robin has been the first vice president and also been the president of the NVTA. Yeah. And for those of you who are not part of North Van, then NVTA is the North Van Teachers Association, which is the local union. And Katrina, you are the president of the NVTA.
President of the NVTA.
Fantastic.
Former first president of the NVTA, yeah.
And loving every minute of it.
On my way out, I can say, loving every minute of it.
What can I ask before? We always have a little icebreaker, but before that, can I ask what got you involved in the NVTA?
So Pat Fong was the chief staff rep at the school I was teaching at, Larson Elementary School, and she was looking at her retirement and, kind of needing a succession plan. And she tapped me on the shoulder to be alternate rep. So she started dragging me to rep assemblies. It must have been in 2014. Maybe 2014, right around there. And she started dragging me to the rep assemblies and having me provide the summaries back to the staff committees. And so she was the first to reel me in.
It's often that senior teacher, right, that has been there that kind of sees and goes, hey.
Wouldn't you like to be part of a wonderful organization?
Right. And then while I was at the rep assemblies, I think Carolyn Penna tapped me on the shoulder to to put my name forward as secretary for the NVTA executive. Right. And then
before you know it.
Before I knew it. Yeah.
Robin, what brought you to the
well, I actually started in the union in a former district that I was at in Chaco, which was I was teaching in Fraser Lake. I was in my third year teaching, and I was the alternate for being on the negotiating team for a new round of bargaining, and we were doing local bargaining at that time. And unfortunately, one of the people who were on the bargaining committee fell off her horse. And so I no longer was the alternate, but in my third year teaching, I was sitting at the negotiating table with the board, bargaining. So that's how I first got involved. And then there hasn't been a year likely since then that I haven't been in one shape or form, working either in bargaining or as a staff rep or going to BCTF annual general meetings, etc. Yeah. So it probably hasn't been a year since 93, which was my third year, 1993.
30 years ago.
Yeah. So that's amazing. How I got started.
Wonderful. So we ready for icebreaker time?
That's right.
Okay.
We do the ABC 1, 2, 3, and this is just to make you feel comfortable. And I'm going to do the ABC. Mark's going to do 1, 2, 3, and just respond with what you think.
First thing that pops in your head.
First thing that pops in.
There's no right or wrong here.
All right. Recess or lunch?
Jeez. Recess. This is an either or question?
Yes.
Recess
or lunch?
Lunch. Well, I guess lunch is just longer. It's great.
Okay.
Is that the question?
Yeah, that's fine. There's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. How about you, Robin?
Well, since I'm a high school teacher, we didn't have recess. Okay. So we have to say lunch.
I'll get a little coffee break. 5 minutes.
5 minute break.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Red or blue?
I'm just thinking purple. I'm really sorry, which of course makes me think of, what was the name of that book? The Purple. Can't remember the name of the book.
Purple Elephant.
No. It was a I don't know, it was a lovely children's story.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway, with, anyway.
Robin.
I'll have to look it up.
Red.
Red, okay. All right. Math or PE?
Oh, definitely math, 100%.
Math, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
No hesitation.
No hesitation there.
No.
All right.
Fiction or nonfiction?
Nonfiction.
Oh, it really depends on my mood. Yeah, absolutely. The last book that I read was nonfiction, but it was took me months and months and months to read it. So, but yeah, fiction both changed my mind. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Apple or banana?
Well, I know Robin's going to pick banana.
Apple.
Can't stand banana.
Can't stand bananas.
Yeah.
I love banana.
Charlene's like that.
Yeah.
Even the smell of them, she runs.
Me too.
So we touched on this a little bit, but who was your favorite teacher and why?
Okay, my favorite teacher was Madame Lemay.
Okay.
She was my history teacher. She was dynamic. She cared about her students. She was very she was organized, but I was in high school in the 80s in Quebec. By being in high school in the 80s, we learned about residential school. We learned about colonization and the harms on the Indigenous people. We learned about,
ahead of the times.
Yeah. We really learned about misogyny and the feminist movement through this teacher. She was fantastic. And she unfortunately passed away when I was in grade 11, which is the last year of secondary in Quebec. She had blood cancer. And the whole school was quite saddened by that passing. But she was my favorite teacher. The teacher that had the biggest influence on me, though, it was my grade 7 math teacher.
Okay, tell us about her.
Who, so she was a nun. When she started teaching as a nun back in the day, when you didn't need a teaching certificate, you could teach because the Catholic Church was part of the system, right? So she had to have been.
God gave you the teaching certificate.
Exactly. Oh yeah, absolutely. So she was kind of like still in the system, right?
From that,
that. And she must have been 70 years old. She was this teeny tiny little woman who, when she was sitting at her desk, her feet didn't touch the ground. And she would she would wave her feet back and forth as she was sitting at her desk. And she was a hard ass. Like if you didn't hand things in that looked just right, she would send them back and make you redo them. She was very particular about how you communicated your math thinking and your processes. Everything had to be really clear, really tidy, and you could not skip a step. And if you did, it got sent back to you and you had to redo it. I hated her. Oh. She was like, as students, we teased her behind her back. It was just pretty universal. We hated this teacher.
And this is your favorite teacher.
Fast forward 2 years, I'm in grade 9 math, and I'm realizing that I am still using everything that I learned in grade 7 to get me through grade 9 math. Yeah. Where I was not paying attention to my teacher. I was a lazy student in general, right? So I kind of I needed that hard ass to get me to do what I needed to. And I used what I learned in grade 7 all the way through high school and into my early years.
But you realized that by grade 9?
I realized that.
Which is amazing. Most grade 9s, I don't think,
would have realized that
at that moment, knowing grade 9 students. Right?
Well, I knew how little I was paying attention and how little work I was actually putting into my my effort that I was putting in, and I was still doing really well. Right, and I knew that it was because of the discipline that she provided me in terms of discipline of thought and process was all I needed really to get through.
Robin, any favorite teacher that pops into your mind?
Yeah, I probably would say I have two. One was a math teacher and one was a chemistry teacher, which is probably why I did my degree with a double major in chemistry and math. The chemistry teacher, Mr. Turner was his name. He was a bit of an odd, quirky kind of guy. Many people would think that he didn't care, that he just did his job because he was kind of monotone, kind of boring sounding and whatever. But
like in Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Yeah. But I got to know that he really did care because when you sloughed off, like I would once in a while in high school, I'd get a little note.
He'd call you on it.
Exactly. And he'd say, I know you can do better. And I know you've given me better work. So he was just kind of that type of silent, encouraging guy without being, so I really quite liked him. And then the math teacher, different kind of character, much more dynamic, quite a bit younger. Most of the students in his class liked him. And I think for him, I think his love for mathematics was probably the biggest plus. Is it gave me a love of mathematics.
Infectious kind of.
And it wasn't just a thing to do. Like most people, my dental hygienist that I spoke to yesterday said, "Oh, I'm not good at math. I never was good at math." Yeah. I almost hear that universally. Yeah. And so, he gave me the love for math, and I think that's why he was one of my favorite teachers.
Yeah. I'm going to throw in the surprise one, okay? There we go.
Okay.
Roy or Martin?
Well, okay, here's the thing. Roy, I don't know if you still have a dog, but you definitely are a dog person, right?
Yes.
So that's always I connect with dog people.
Thank you.
But I work more closely with Martin.
Yes.
So I have more of that connection. So
Loaded question.
I can't.
It's loaded. Okay. On the spot. You want to go there?
I have to say Martin. Sorry, Roy.
I expected that.
Okay.
Yeah, Martin, I never knew Martin very well before coming to work in the union office. Martin was the first vice president. He was the president when I came in as first vice president. And that was Martin's first year as president. I think it was his third year in the office. And I, having known Martin a little bit on the executive, I expected we'd be at odds most of the time because we're quite different in our way of thinking and our way of approaching things. But surprisingly, we worked very well together. And it was quite enjoyable working with Martin because we seemed to have opposites ways of approaching things, but we were able to play the devil's advocate for each other and try to get each other to come to, a certain way of thinking. And I think that's why I really enjoyed working with Martin in the office.
Yeah.
And so it was not what I'd expected, but in the end, it was actually quite good.
Yeah, I'll throw it right back at you. I was quite nervous, actually, right, at first.
Yeah.
Right? With you, with my first vice president, right? Just knowing our interactions on the executive, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It shows you, it takes just different facets of a character to kind of build something, right? You can't have the same type for everything.
Exactly.
I think sometimes we were stronger than the separate parts kind of thing.
For sure.
Right? Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
Good.
Right.
Thank you. Okay.
So I'm going to start off with a question. Could you share some of the supports that you offer for our members, for the NVTA members? What are some of the supports that you offer?
Well, I mean, it's going to sound strange, but probably the number one support we tend to offer in this office is that of counselor. I don't know, I want to put a percent on it, but a high percentage of the phone calls that we get, people really just want you to listen. And sometimes that could be a bit frustrating because sometimes you have to listen for 25 minutes and not get a word in. But I would say that that's certainly the number one support. Number two supports is simply understanding the collective agreement and how it operates and what their rights are. Wouldn't you say, Katrina? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly around leaves. So what people's rights are, what leaves are available to them, what the rights are around those leaves, the return from leave provisions, all of those are really important. Yeah. And then I would say that dovetails into medical leaves specifically. And so the NVTA works really closely with the BCTF to help people get the supports that they need through long-term medical leaves, getting medical accommodations. Yeah.
That's great.
It's huge.
A big part of our in North Vancouver is the fact we have staff committee, which is like the local union meetings at schools. Can you speak to the importance of those staff committee meetings that don't always, maybe not every school finds them as important as they should be? Could you speak to the power of a really strong staff committee or school union meeting that happen, every week or every 2 weeks?
Yeah.
How it can actually make the school run better.
It is interesting when I think about the schools where there is a really strong staff committee versus the schools where a staff committee, might not meet so frequently, and isn't as cohesive and doesn't draw as large a percentage of the staff. We definitely see a much more robust understanding of teachers' rights, including the leaves that we spoke about. But teachers are much more confident in their roles, much more confident in their positions. Staff committee is much more comfortable going to the principal with their concerns. And in schools where there is a lack of a robust staff committee presence, teachers are working more in silos and are not learning about their rights from each other, right? And so they are much more reliant on calling the NVTA office for support. And then we sometimes see people not being proactive enough and letting issues go for long periods of time without addressing them, which then puts us in a position where it's much harder to go back and fix it. It's much easier to fix things in a moving forward basis than to go back and try to fix things retroactively. And so and that happens both on the individual level and like at school-wide level, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with Katrina. It's staff committees. I mean, since the late 80s, principals of schools used to be on the same sort of level as teachers in the school. We were colleagues. We were all, union members, part of the BCTF. Yeah. And then, of course, in the late 80s, that changed through legislation that principals became management. And so it changed the dynamic in schools. And I think that a strong staff committee actually strengthens that divide of management and staff because it allows for the staff, as Katrina said, to voice a unified voice to the principal that this is the wishes of the staff, or this is what the staff would like. And I've had many principals over the years when I was a staff committee chair come to ask me, well, I'd like to try to do this. What do you think the staff would like? And my answer would always be, well, I'll have to ask the staff committee. And she would say, well, come on, can't you give me a bit of an idea? What? And I said, no. I said, the staff committee decides for the staff what we do. And so I think the strength of it is a unified voice, that you're not dealing with the principal talking to individual silos, as Katrina referred to, where that can cause conflicts between other staff. Yeah. Whereas the staff committee provides that unified voice. And I think that's why a strong one is really important.
And do you think some administrators can see it as a positive too?
Absolutely.
Not just like, staff committee. And see
well, that principal I spoke about, she absolutely did. Like she always jarred me a little bit trying to get an answer, but she totally knew that I would get an answer from the staff and it would be a unified voice. Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I think that a good administrator recognizes that a strong staff committee actually makes their jobs easier because there's going to be less of that conflict, right? That is created by the administrator having to deal with individual members on issues rather than
it's all above board. And here it is. Let's discuss it. Okay.
So then why do you think it's important for teachers to know their rights then? Like how does that benefit teacher to know their rights? Looking through the collective agreement.
Well, I think that knowing their rights also helps them to know their responsibilities. Okay. And I think that collective agreement lays out what teachers can and can't do, so to speak. But it allows for a level playing field. Often as a staff rep, I've heard from administrators, they refer to it as your collective agreement or the teacher's collective agreement, which is furthest from the truth. In fact, that's why it's called a collective agreement. It's agreement between the parties. And I think that when you're explaining to teachers where to find certain things in the collective agreement where they can know their rights, it helps them articulate a conversation with their administrator or perhaps HR to what their wishes are or their knowledge of the collective agreement helps get to a place that is supportive and helpful. So I think that it is important for teachers to know their rights. There are a lot that don't read the collective agreement. There are a lot that don't bother with it. But I've always found that when you point them to a specific article in the collective agreement with regards to what they're talking about, that they are quite amazed that there's actually something written about what they thought about, what the issue was for them or whatever. Yeah. So I think it's really important. And I think not enough teachers actually spend a bit of time, not suggesting they take it to bed and read. You'd fall asleep. You'd fall asleep in a minute.
We just mentioned that the other day in
Yeah.
a
I was in a
podcast.
Yeah.
But I think that.
But how would you encourage them to do that then? Like,
Well, I
think you're right.
Well, actually,
How do we get them?
The best way to learn the collective agreement is actually to be a rep at a school. And I think when you're a staff rep, you're forced to read the collective agreement much more. And I would always encourage everyone to be a staff rep at one point in time, or a staff committee chair. People really shy away from that role, but you tend to really learn the collective agreement. And obviously, working in this office, you get an even more intimate understanding.
Yeah.
You even know on what side of what page a certain article is because of the way it looks, because you've looked at it so many times.
Are there things a staff committee can do to get maybe those teachers that are union shy, to get them more involved in the process and come to meetings and learn about their collective agreement?
You know, and I always ask that question about, from staff, because we have some schools that regularly bring over 30% of their staff to general meetings, for example, right? You know, they have a really good, strong presence that shows up. And so those staffs have a strong voice at general meetings. And then they tend to also bring very interesting motions to the rep assemblies, right? You know, that there's real robust understanding of their collective rights. Sometimes there are robust misunderstandings of their collective rights, but that's where we get an opportunity then to help bring a stronger, better understanding, right? When people, but I don't know, like, I really think breaking bread is the way to go, right? So
it's true.
It's amazing when I've brought treats to a staff committee meeting, the increase in attendance is huge. So, that's...
I just can hear it buzzing. It's
Not mine.
Oh, is it me? Oh, it's me. It's here. Sorry, here I am. Looking around.
Yes, Martin.
I just hear it coming through.
Yes, I think
Robin says knowingly, I've been there.
it's any time that there's a free meal or a free snack or something, is just one thing off. Oh, I'm a little snacky right now. I'll go to this meeting and get a free thing and listen. That's how you draw teachers in.
Yeah.
Free lunch.
And unfortunately, I don't know how we can do that in a sustained way, right? Yeah. So that, it's not really the answer.
Yes.
Except, it could be done in a potluck kind of way, right? If each member on staff brought one thing once a month, not one thing once a month, one thing a year to a staff committee meeting, that could be enough to bring in a larger percentage of people.
And I guess some people have to learn the hard way. It's not till they actually need the union, and then the union is there for them. They go, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And we've heard that a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I think of this job as a thankless job, except I get a lot of thanks from people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And it's amazing how we take for granted that people know things, right? And for the most part, they don't.
Right.
And so, we help them navigate a very complicated system sometimes.
And becoming more complicated, right? It's a harder job than ever. And that's why we need the union more than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So why is staffing season such a stressful time for teachers? And is there a way to ease that process?
I'll answer your second question first. No, I don't think there is a way to ease that process. It's staffing season is all about individual staff's security blanket, comfort of where they're teaching and what they're teaching. And so when that's in flux at staffing season, perhaps they are being transferred by the board, or perhaps they're surplused at a school, or in times in the past, we've had layoffs and such. That whole time of year is everybody's year, part of the year that's very uncertain. And so I don't think you could give knowledge about it. You can help people through it, but I don't think there's a way to avoid it completely. It's human nature to be stressed when you're uncertain about what's going on in your life at the moment.
Yeah.
What's happening next. And so I think that it's just the way it is.
Part of the job.
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I think you answered both questions there.
Did I?
That is why staffing season is so stressful, is because it's a time of uncertainty, right, for members. And
and I think, go ahead, Katrina.
I was just going to say, like, I think when there's a little bit more certainty about the process and an understanding that, or when there's trust that the process is going to be done fairly, there's a reduction in the angst on staff. Even if it doesn't mean that you're going to get what you want in the following school year, it doesn't mean that, some people are still going to be surplus, but when there's a trust that the process is going to be transparent and fair, it reduces the angst.
Yeah. That's key.
I think also like part of staffing season, which we didn't touch on, is your assignment in the school. And so at every spring, everybody's potential assignment, even if they're not leaving the school, may change. So you might go from teaching a grade 5 to teaching a grade 7, or you might, go down to teaching a 4-5 or whatever. In high school, you might teach different subjects, etc. And so that time of year, that uncertainty, and sort of I find in conversations with teachers when we're trying to help them through the process, is they often look at some of that process as being unfair. Why did they get grade 4 when I wanted grade 4, or whatever? And
I've had grade 4 for 10 years.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And what I try to tell, in particular, I think at an elementary school, but it's even more complex at a secondary school, because you're dealing with, like many teachers and lots of different blocks. But at an elementary school, like
cross departments,
right? I try to tell people when they call, your principal does have a hard job during staffing, because they've got all these pieces that they have to fit together to staff a school. So there's many part-time people, there's many full-time people, and that puzzle has to get put together, because that's the job of the principals, to make sure his school is staffed. And if he has too many, well, then he or she has to surplus. If they don't have enough, then they've got to post jobs. But I try to tell them, you aren't going to get what you want all the time, because the principal has to put together all these pieces of a jigsaw puzzle to create staffing at a school. And I try to tell people that, and for the most part, it does alleviate their stress or their sense of their sense of unfairness in the process. They kind of go, well, okay, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense.
Okay. Great. In British Columbia, we call our substitute teachers teaching on call, TTOCs. Are there any TTOC issues that have kind of come to the forefront of your mind that come up during these years, especially with shortages and other things like that?
Well, it's interesting, because the school district needs to staff the school system, and finding a balance of the right number of TTOCs to have on their list is a tricky place. We've actually been really fortunate in North Vancouver the past couple of years in terms of the failures to fill. It's improved. That's, the failures to fill being like when they don't have enough TTOCs to fill all of the absences due to illness and other reasons. And so we're seeing a definite improvement in those failures to fill. And so the issues that we've been seeing over the past 2 years have been more complaints from TTOCs not getting enough work.
Okay.
So it's not, that does ebb and flow throughout the school year. Right now, December has been really difficult. Apparently the retired teachers who are on the TTOC list are not as quick to pick up jobs in December, because, they like to take longer vacations. So
have you found it, like, having retired teachers, that's been like, without that, it would be such.
I don't know what we would do.
The school district wouldn't survive without TTOCs that are retired teachers. So, it's not like in the past when, some people would say, well, don't don't teach when don't TTOC when you're retired because you're taking away
Someone's job,
from young students, But if we didn't have that, we would have failure to fills a lot. I did a really, really rough count. And I believe that we're anywhere between a quarter and a third of our TTOCs are retired teachers. Yeah. So you can imagine if a third or even a quarter of that list disappeared, that we would be in, and what Katrina talks about the last couple of years, prior to that, we were dealing with thousands of failure to fills in a year.
Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea.
Down from that last year, and for the most part this year, I think we're dealing with, I don't know, under 100 even?
I think last year in total was between just over 100.
Yeah. So considerably different than 2021 and 2022, where there was a number of...
sometimes 100 in a day.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was in the office, it was such an issue with failure to fill, because then you have a librarian or an LST has to move into that role, and then students don't get those services that they
taking
right?
services in school.
Yeah. But I was speaking to a principal yesterday who was in a grade 4-5 class yesterday.
Good to hear.
Because because there was they had an absence that wasn't filled, and great on her. She didn't pull the librarian or the LST. She stepped in and taught that grade 4-5 class. Yeah. Nice. So we definitely love to see that. And when we do see principals stepping into the classroom roles when there's a failure to fill, it really increases the goodwill among the staff. And it makes them less resentful when they do miss non-instructional time, or when, services are pulled, from time to time, because they know that the principal is stepping up sometimes.
We're all in this together.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
What part of your role here do you find the most enjoyable? Share the joy.
And I don't know how much, I don't know.
Being on a podcast.
This in your podcast. I don't know if you're going to put this on your podcast, but when I'm fighting a fight that I know I'm going to win, because I know that we are on the right side of, of the law, essentially. That's fun. It's energizing, right? So it's frustrating that we have to fight those fights, but when I have a really strong conviction and a strong confidence in the process and in our position, it's fun.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a good feeling.
And to get that validated through the process is exhilarating. Yeah. But
I think for me, as Martin, you will know, and Katrina definitely knows, people are not calling the union office when they're having a great day. It's just doesn't happen. No. Nobody calls. Oh, my day has been going fine. How about you? It just doesn't happen. People always call with an issue.
Yes.
Problems, not problems, whatever they are, some form of issue. And I think the joy that I've got out of it, this being my 7th year working in the office, the joy that I get is knowing that I've helped somebody and knowing that they appreciate what I've done for them. And I think that, you're never going to hit that every time, because sometimes there just isn't something that can help. But letting people know the information that they didn't know, but now this helps them alleviate a stress, alleviate a pressure on them. That to me, just like it did when I was teaching with kids, that joy of having helped someone and having someone learn something from you, I can go home feeling like I made a difference today. I helped some people. Yeah. And I think that's, in this job, you have to really grab those when you can, because they don't happen, fortunately, as often as you would like. Certainly not as much as when I was teaching. You'd find a lot more of that joy with the kids. Yeah. But here, not as much. But it does come, and it's usually comes several times a day. But you always have to take that home, rather than
some of the negativity,
the other negative things that inevitably happen here, whether that be us dealing with the school district or just dealing with a member that's challenging.
Yes.
And so that's the part of the job I find that gives me joy.
Oh, well, thank you. We so appreciate you taking the time, because being in this job, I know how busy you are. You don't have many moments to have two people come in and ask you questions. So we really appreciate this. And this is
Yes.
It's great for the listeners to hear about what the NVTA does and what the union does. And this has just been a joy for us.
Well,
Yes,
I was going to follow up though with that.
Oh,
right?
okay. Oh.
Because, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, Martin, when you were in the office. But there are those moments when you get somebody on the phone who is very, very heightened, and there's a satisfaction in hanging up the phone with a calm person on the other side, right?
To turn that around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Change that narrative.
And it's giving them knowledge and a sense of support, right? Is
you made a difference in their day, right?
For that moment.
Yeah. Roy, anything to add?
No, this has been awesome.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, that was a really good interview with Katrina and Robin from the North Vancouver Teachers Association.
Yes, I was really happy that they took the time to talk to us, and I'm sure it'll give our listeners a little more information about the job of the union and the important role that they play in helping teachers.
Yeah, and that unconditional support they bring. And I really hope those that do not have a union, probably whether it's a private school or parts of the world that don't have unions, my answer is unionize. This podcast is organic, taking shape with each episode. Building resiliency for teachers everywhere.
That sounds great.
And our website is stuntbrothers.ca.
That's stuntbrothers.ca.
We will chat again
after the bell.